a little housekeeping. We all have new committee assignments. All board members, glad that you here that are not part of the Rules Committee, welcome to the Rules Committee meeting. Just a little housekeeping that if there's a vote or something, that only the committee votes on that. We have a very light Rules Committee this month. And so at this point, first of all, for those who don't know, that Mr. Mason is vice chair, I'm chair of Rules. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Taylor.
Happy New Year to everyone. So item number 1, request for the amendment of State Board Rule 160-4-3-2022, work-based learning programs. This rule is being requested for initiation, which means it's approved. The rule will be posted for 30 days public review and comment. The rule is being amended to update the eligibility requirements of students who may enroll in a work-based learning program to align with Georgia law, which now permits any student aged 15 and over to participate. The amendments to this rule also include the addition of the Great Promise Partnership as a 5th category within the work-based learning program as a result of the integration of the Great Promise Partnership within the Department of Education. If approved for initiation, this amended rule will be posted for 30 days public review and comment.
Any comments, questions?
Just one quick question. Was there a different age requirement before this? Was it a grade level requirement or was it age requirement?
It was 16.
It was 16, okay.
Any other questions, comments? If not, we will plan to move this to the consent agenda and it'll be posted for 30 days for comment from the public.
Item number 2 is request to initiate new State Board Rule 7-1.02, local educational agency and school transparency. Again, this rule is being requested for initiation, which means if approved, will be posted for 30 days public review and comment. The rule is being created to outline and incorporate transparency requirements necessary to ensure parents and communities are informed and equipped to engage in and make the best decisions for their students' education. This draft of proposed State Board Rule 160-7-1.02 strengthens LEA and school transparency to parents and communities by requiring LEAs and their governing bodies to adopt a local policy to ensure transparency to parents and the community, ensure parental access to their child's education record, publicly post and maintain the posting of the LEA's annual operating budget, annually report both formative assessments and curriculum and instructional materials, and provide public review, board approval, and parental inspection of surveys for research projects, grants, or by third-party providers. If approved for initiation, this rule will be posted for 30 days public review and comment.
Okay, any comments, questions?
A question. On here where it talks about local formative assessments, what type of assessments do you mean? Is it going to be uniform across the state or different for each district? And is it GMAP, pre-test, post-test?
So you're talking about the formative assessments within the
transparent
education agencies, the LEAs.
Yeah.
So it would be the formative assessments that are used within those LEAs that are either contracted by a third party or developed by a third party that are either could be developed by the LEA for use LEA-wide or by at school level for whole grade bands within the school. It's not meant for unit tests or individual teacher assessments. We're talking about
This does not involve teaching. Yeah, this does not involve teacher tests, anything created at school, but I mean, it could be like with the STARS maps, I mean, things that they bring in. And I think it just allows parents, again, the intent is to see how much testing is actually going on. You know, I think, is there some redundancy, and hopefully this will allow districts and even, you know, people that perhaps not knowing how much or what is out there, to give them a better assessment of what is actually taking place throughout the school. And I think this would, you know, help teachers as well. Again, trying to make sure we hopefully maximize, and districts are hopefully maximizing instructional time, not to be so locked up on test prep, But, are we actually moving our students where they need to be and reaching out? So, again, this just gives a better sense of what is being offered, through the instructional method there. But, as far as teacher tests, anything you're doing, no.
Okay.
I mean, that,
Just want
yeah.
to make sure that there's clarification.
yes, like I said, it is no intent to be more of a burden upon teachers and what goes on in the classroom, but hopefully this will alleviate maybe some of the redundancy that might be out there.
Any other?
Have we received a FTE count, state annual report card? Haven't heard anything about the FTE.
I think the first count, we should have received that, so we can get that information. That first count,
Yeah, we can get you the copy.
Okay.
For October.
And one other question, with the CARES money, I know 1, 2, 3, possibly maybe 4. I know you said that Matt Cordoza was going to be over that. With the CARES money, has everything been delineated to the different districts, what they can and cannot do? Have you had a lot of questions or conversation? Is there some information that we need to be aware of as our districts talk to us about that?
where were you issued?
Because I know there's a lot of angst with budget items with different districts, for teacher retention and other items in their budget item lines.
Yeah, so districts, for all of the, I'll call it ESSER funds, all the rounds of ESSER 1, 2, and 3 CARES board, that was laid out in CARES Act what was allowable. So difference between what's allowable and then what we say is best practice and things like that. So y'all approved a contract with the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education a couple months ago. What they're going to do is they're looking to see how our district's spending it right now, so we can look at best practices for general use. But in terms of how they can spend it, the allowability categories are wide open, and we're not. And they make it really clear in the CARES law that the SEA, the state, is not allowed to tell a district that they have to use it on this if it's allowable over here.
And Mr. Cardoza, again, one of the things on the CARES 3, it had a little more strings attached, was a little more not quite as flexible. Is that correct? Would be a correct statement?
That's right. So with the ARP funds, there were a lot more funds, but one thing that U.S. Department of Education did was they updated the frequently asked questions, which has essentially been our guidance. And they made it really clear about a couple of things. One is that the school districts couldn't take these funds and just put it in a rainy day fund. They couldn't put it in their general fund. So they made a part very clear about state revenue loss or revenue loss in general. So it could be local property tax loss as well. So that they are not to spend on continuity of services. So they're keeping things afloat, paying staff more than the percentage of revenue loss. So right now they have okayed using the 11%, which is what we thought the original austerity would be, and it moved to 4, but they've okayed the 11 because that's what they had to plan for. And then if a district had, some major local revenue loss, they can use that towards it. And outside of that, they can't go above that. One consternation for districts has been the local bonuses. A lot of them have been doing above and beyond what you all approved. The US Ed has come out with some documents just in the last month, really, that Secretary Cardona even encouraging school districts to use the money for those. So I think the Department of Audit, originally had some concerns about those, but hopefully that's going to be permissible now for our school districts because the US Ed has really put a focus on using that for that purpose for compensation.
All right, thank you.
I have a question about the rule that we're pushing. Adopt a local policy to ensure transparency to parents and the community. Can I get a little more detail on that? I want to understand what we're going to be asking the districts to do.
And really it's about how they're outlining their, the details of how they're going to ensure that transparency for districts and schools. So one part of our policy, specifically as it relates to the formative assessments and the curriculum and instructional materials, requires the reporting to the department so that we can also assist our LEAs with organizing and disseminating that information to the public. So that's the support and resources piece, but the part about the transparency and the policy for the LEA is making sure that they have a policy on hand, that they are able to work with their communities and they make known to their communities what their policy for transparencies are, so that parents and communities know how to access the information that they need to access to make those decisions, and who they contact in the process for either airing grievances or communicating with or working with their local board on addressing concerns.
Thank you. And I would just add, I mean, when you look at the purpose behind that, I think it's basically almost 2 or 3-fold there. You know, first of all, is looking at making sure we ensure that we build, maintain, and keep public trust. I think it's important as you look at this that, you know, as I share with people, I said, you know, our parents and our community, I mean, they fund public education. And basically they are our board in all cases. And I think it's very important that we are open with what's going on, that they have access to what, you know, kids are being exposed to, or what their curriculum, what content. You know, if they want to dig down and make sure, because we have to be very respectful of that. I think it does look at that. The public trust is something that we cannot afford to lose when it comes to education. I think, and that's, you know, something we really do have to focus on. Also, I think it helps unify a process in the state of Georgia, where we can look at best practices and see what's working, what's not working. Looking at ways that how do we make sure that we have clear communication between school districts and, you know, working with us as a state and working with our parents and local entities as well. And, you know, like I said, I think that for here, it provides a more, or ensures a more open line of communication, which again, anytime you have a breakdown in communication, things happen. And it's usually not on the good side. So that's, you know, kind of working with this. You know, as we looked at this and crafted with this, is make sure we are not adding any burden to the local district, but really just ensuring that it is open. I think whether it's your budget, you know, I think needs to be clear. It's no different than our budget up here at the DOE of what that looks like. What are the processes, again, as Dr. Taylor mentioned, of how do you communicate, how do you engage with your local communities to make sure that that's very clear, you know, on the front end, because, you know, sometimes navigating education can be somewhat burdensome, to be honest, with the bureaucracy. And so we just want to make sure that getting inside that door is a little bit easier so we can support our parents and make sure that, you know, that we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Excellent.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Just a couple of questions that I'm, just for clarification mainly. The requirement about access to student records. And I don't know if we keep this kind of a record here at DOE, but it's talking to local districts. I think most, if not all, of our local districts use a student information system, which has a parent portal. And in the districts that I'm familiar with, and that's not all of them, but the parents have 24/7 access to their students' records electronically, right? I mean, that's the way you can access your students' individual records, not just grades, but attendance and discipline and other things like that. So what we're doing here, I'm just asking for clarification. What we're doing here is trying to promote some best practices for this, not really changing anybody's protocols because most of our districts already engage in this. We're just promoting a best practices. Would that be an accurate statement on my part? Is that what we're doing here with this rule? Because a lot of this is we're already doing. That's the point I'm trying to make,
Yes,
right?
so it's twofold, right? One is promoting best practices, And two is also, I think, for us, in terms of those spring districts, streamlining and being able to put some of these transparency pieces in one policy together. So yes, a lot of pieces are buried in other places throughout policy. So instead of having districts try to dig to find out what their requirements are in different areas, you've got a transparency rule that also highlights for you.
And it's the department's wish that we promote these best practices and by using this as kind of a template for a local rule?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm not a big fan of gotcha rulemaking, but if I am a big fan of best practices rulemaking. So if we can make sure that we stay on that side of the line, I think I can support this.
Well, again, I don't think anything is shared. It's not a gotcha process. Again, I think it is trying to make sure that we do, as I said, build that public trust. I think that's extremely important, especially in this day and time that's out there. And I think streamlining something that allows both the parents and the school districts to effectively communicate with each other, to make sure that everybody's on the same playing field and understands the process, I think would go a long way. But again, just so that we can say, how do we better support you as a parent and really help you support your child's education as we continue to move forward? Because I think it also is looking at very reflective of what are the values, what is important to the local school district as well. Again, it's traveling around 181 something school districts. Everyone's a little bit different. And I think that, this, again, the intent is never to be a gotcha, but how do we improve the process and not necessarily even do something that's redundant of something that's out there. But again, I think that dimensioning, let's unify, have something that's unifying us all. So if you move from district to district, what are the commonalities? What are the best practices we can, put in one house?
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, that's all rules has. Yes, ma'am.
Comment, it's not about this particular rule, but just to share about the dyslexia meeting that we had on December 13th. That was a really good meeting. It was a good start and conversation about dyslexia and the dyslexia rule. And just want to find out if the next meeting that is tentatively scheduled is January 31st.
Tentatively, I'm going to be on a conversation this afternoon with Mr. Pruitt
Okay.
to kind of finalize, make sure that date is going to work for the
Most
majority of the
Okay.
people. But it was a very good meeting that was held. We had some tech issues a little bit from the room we were in, so we're going to work on that to make it better, just in case someone just can't be here. But it was a lot of really good conversation, and I would say that people who came in with a strong mindset maybe didn't leave. I mean, everybody was really willing to listen to everybody, and no one was saying, I'm right, you can't change my mind. Everyone was willing to listen to everybody. And I was not the expert in the room, so all I did was listen and learned a lot that day.
It was good to hear from Senator Millard, being one of the authors of the bill, to speak on it and what its intent was.
I would reiterate what you said, Hetty. I think it definitely was very collaborative in nature and just felt very positive and just people wanting to together take it in the right direction. It was very good.
It was great. All right, any other comments, questions? If not, we'll plan to move item number 2 to the consent agenda tomorrow. And that's all we have for rules. If someone have anything? Nope.
Madam Chair, we were just talking, and it might be good while we've got all the board members out here to go ahead and move into executive session while we've got a quorum here and not have to come back out.
Yeah, so if everyone's okay with that, I'll call to order the meeting, and we'll entertain a motion that we go into executive session, and please state what purposes that might be.
Well, it'd be for personnel, for rules, for right,
All right, so
legal.
do I have a motion?
I have a motion.
Legal.
Second.
Okay. Anybody oppose? All in favor?
All right.
Only
We're
done
going
it-
into executive
I've
session.
only done it 200 times and carried.
What's that?
Why do we, if you ever do it, I
Mark,
don't
is
think
anyone
we
on?
did.
I don't think anybody's.
Helen's not on that.
Helen's
First
not
thing
there.
anyone-
What about Mark?
Begin connecting up there. It was real funny when we did, and I know you've been through this, when we used to have a local